Makere Rugema. I work with Green Pulse Limited and also a member of the Agriculture Chemicals Board.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Johnny Lukor. I work with the World Bank.
You can come to this table. Good on.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Alex Rockwell, Commissioner Crop Production Department, the Ministry of Agriculture and Industry.
Thank you. Welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Percy Nakauka, Makere University, Department of Agriculture and Biosystems Engineering.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Joseph Ogayo. I'm the head of program for Beltunga IFPRI, WHH in Uganda. Thank you.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Alex Otut, Ministry of Agriculture, Namaleria.
Good. I will still welcome new members and thank you once again for honoring the time to be with us. Once again, I'm Samson Tuheyo. I'll be taking you through the next session about the dissemination of soil health findings. And without wasting time, allow me to invite a representative from IFPRI, Dr. Claudia, to come and give us opening remarks. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you for the kind introduction. Thanks to everyone for being here this afternoon. And some of you have also been here this morning. So as we said, we are switching gears from this morning where we focused on the contribution of small-scale irrigation to the implementation of the CAADP strategy and action plan. So now we are moving into the role of soil health in Uganda, and also focusing on soil health and equity, gender and equity, now for the implementation and the localization of the African fertilizer and soil health strategy and action plan. Next slide, please. Yeah, so, you know, very few people who work on soil health and who work on fertilizer, they think about gender and equity, right? Because usually you look at the soil, and we have Dr. Kaizi here, and you know he will never mention the word gender, I think, or women, but that's why biophysical scientists and social scientists have to work together, because a lot of the reason of why those soil health parameters are changing is because of the soil health manager. And the question is, who is the soil health manager? It can be a man who has, access to resources and who has access to networks, or it could be a woman and she has access to different resources and to different networks. And so what we find is that a lot of the outcomes on soil health are actually determined by the gender of the soil health manager. So we have to bring these things together. Why are soil health parameters changing, and what is the role of the soil health manager in all of that? And in this morning, we saw some slides where we have shown, or where we could show for a very small sample, that the share of women-headed households or female-headed households in Uganda has increased. And as a result, it's also important, to make sure that we get enough soil health measures and to improve the soil health management on the plots of women. Because if this continues to change and a lot of the men work in cities or they work abroad, if you don't focus on women as a soil health manager, it might be more difficult for us to improve soil health outcomes. And so here, this slide just shows, the current status, where we know that when a woman operates a plot or manages a plot, on average across the study countries in Africa, the productivity gap is 24%. So, if we know that a man manages the plot, we can already assume that the productivity is 24% higher, or if a woman is the manager, it's 24% lower. And we know all of the reasons, a lot of structural reasons in terms of access to finance, access to other resources, literacy, etc., norms, traditions. So we find this gap. And if we can improve soil health management, but also, of course, irrigation, we can reduce the gap. If we can reduce the gap, we can not only increase agricultural productivity on those lands. If women have more decisions and they can actually manage also the outputs generated on this land, we know that there are multiple other benefit streams for the family in terms of investment in education, investment in health, and we see better nutrition, so better diet quality in those households. So that's why we're interested in this topic. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. Yeah, so this is a framework that was published a couple years ago that more or less says the same thing. It says we have been trying to improve soil health management strategies, right? There's been investment, there's this constant fertilizer improvement plans and soil health improvement plans. But we haven't really seen much improvement over time. And I think in big part it is because we're only looking at the agronomic factors and we don't look at the governance and we don't look at the social factors, including who is the soil health manager. Next slide. So what could you do differently if you want to actively promote soil health management with women as the soil health manager? So there's the so-called RBET framework: reach, benefit, empower, and transform. And so when we talk to implementers or governments in terms of how are you reaching women farmers, and we'll get to the African Fertilizer and Soil Health Strategy, what they say, how they want to reach women, but we'll get to that. But so these are some examples. If you want to reach women, what people usually say is we include them in training or in sensitization, in awareness raising. And this morning, when we talk about the YouGive project on the solar powered irrigation and other micro irrigation, they said, yes, we invited the women they were part of the sensitization process. So basically that's how you can reach women, but you don't know if you actually will benefit them or you empower them or you transform anything. Then you can go further. So when you do an intervention design, so again, if you do a soil health intervention, for example, you propose soil bonds, okay, then, you can talk to women farmers and first ask them, is soil bonds an intervention that you can actually benefit from? The same this morning, it's a solar powered irrigation system, something you can benefit from. And they might have said, yes, if I can use it for domestic water, for example. For the soil health strategy, if it's soil bonds, traditionally we hear that it's not a good strategy for them because it's very labor intensive, takes too much time, but there might be other soil health management strategies that they would like to engage in. So it's important to engage with women before you come to the village and say, this is the solution. If you really want to not just reach them, but you also want to benefit them, okay? And then we want to, obviously not just benefit them, we also want them to be able to make life choices and to take decision on where they want to go with their own livelihood strategies. To do that, we are trying to make sure that their time poverty is not further affected, and that they can also take decision over the management of those plots, for example. A big problem with most soil health management strategies is that they're very time consuming. So women are not interested. No surprise, because they already have very little time. And that's why we also often don't find them adopting those practices. At the same time, their women are limited in terms of, purchasing fertilizer, for example, purchasing expensive soil health interventions. And so as a result, they still have to rely on often labor-intensive practices. And there might be some intermediate practices like intercropping, crop rotations, that don't take that much labor and that much time, and you don't have to get a credit to implement these practices. And that's where we then usually see women centering on. But we want them to also have the opportunity to get credit, to purchase fertilizer, or to actually benefit from existing fertilizer subsidy programs. And whenever I have not looked into the Uganda program, so I can't say much about it, but we have looked into the Kenya program and other programs, and we know that it's much more difficult for women to access credit to get fertilizer, because often they need to have a land title, they need to travel to submit their documents, and then the women just say, sorry, we can't do that. We don't have the time, we don't have mobility, we don't have the title, etc. So, we need to overcome. So we want to change norms and traditions. We don't want women to only do the crop rotations. And then finally, transform, where we, for example, a big issue there is land inheritance laws. And that's, for example, I think my understanding is women, can inherit land in Uganda, but despite that, it's usually men, men who own the land and men who manage the land. And so again, that is a bigger job. But we always should strive to work a little bit across all of those spheres. Next slide. I hope we're coming now to the African Fertilizer and Soil Health Action Plan 2023 to 2033. So I was there in Kenya when they launched the Fertilizer and Soil Health Action Plan and Strategy. I managed the only session on gender and soil health, because I think it's a very important topic. And so as you remember, we said you can do reach, benefit, empower, or transform. And so the action plan is currently very thin. There's not much there on gender, but they promise to do more. In the preamble, so that's right at the beginning of the document, they state a specialized gender and youth integration program will be mainstreamed for ensuring equitable benefits to women and youth. But this thing, to my knowledge, doesn't exist. So we need to keep following up with the AUC and I guess also in Uganda, what's going to happen on this component of the African Fertilizer and Soil Health Strategy and Action Plan. Where do we stand on gender? Okay, there's 4 outcomes in the strategy. So the first one is improved investment policies, finance and markets. Second one, improved access and affordability of organic and inorganic fertilizers. Third, greater efficiency, of using these fertilizer inputs, organic and inorganic. And of course, we want the capacity for enhanced soil health management. Those are all very important goals. But what does the action plan so far say about women as soil health managers? So they say, okay, we want to promote under outcome 1, gender sensitive, finance technical support and information. Because of course, if women don't have information, that there might be a credit that's specifically targeted to them to get access to fertilizer. If they don't have information, if there's no awareness, and if there's no special finance directed to women, it's unlikely that they can implement sustainable soil health management practices. Then they're stuck with the crop rotation. So there's one article, one piece in a very long document. And then the only other piece that's there just suggests, that women should be engaged in selling fertilizer, basically. It's written a bit differently, but that's what it says. And, that women, same thing, agro dealerships, and that's it. And there's nothing else there right now to support them. And that, I think, in part has to do with some fertilizer companies, when they're being asked, how do you ensure equity? They said, women sell our fertilizer. That's why it's equitable. But then I asked them, have any women benefited from a woman selling the fertilizer? Are women more likely to buy? No one knows because there's no impact assessment. So no one knows if a woman is selling fertilizer, if that makes any difference in terms of reach, benefit, empower, transform. That's where we stand. So there's a long way to go. Anyway, so now you've heard a lot about this particular topic, but of course we are also focusing on plain soil health management without the gender perspective. Not sure if there's one more slide. Oh yeah, those are some entry points to strengthen equity in the African Fertilizer and Soil Health Action Plan that I have proposed. I think no one has taken them up, but there's still opportunity to take them up if an action plan, an equitable action plan is being developed that specifically focuses on women and youth. So it's very important to actually know, to what extent women have access to all soil health management measures, including the ones that cost money, such as fertilizer. So we need the data. If you don't have the data, no one knows. People always think it's gender blind, so everyone should get access. Reality is, if it's gender blind, they will not get access. Always consult representatives of women before you put any localization of this plan. Don't just think you know what women need. Actually talk to the women. If you don't do that, don't expect that it's going to work out. Women have a lot of practical knowledge because they have all of those constraints. They have actually very great ideas how to still, generate some soil health and how to keep growing crops. We really need to collect those great ideas that they already have and the way they're currently operating. Why can they still grow crops with the very limited set of measures that they can access? And then, we really need to actively close the divide. Now we talk about all these digital tools. In all countries in Africa, we avoid the fact that there is no extension or poor extension because we just provide everything over mobile phones or the internet. Then we look at the numbers. How many women have access to internet? How many women have access to smartphones? It's a huge gap, especially in Uganda. I think Uganda has one of the largest gaps in Africa in terms of women's access to internet and smartphones. So whenever someone says we'll use a digital solution, you automatically are increasing the gap between women and men. You automatically make things worse for women because now men get even more information, more access. Women don't have access, so you're making things worse. So try, if you want to do digital solutions, which sounds great, make sure that you find a way that women can also access these tools, because otherwise you explicitly increase inequity. You're growing inequity. And of course, you need those broader structural measures, as I said, in terms of land rights, increasing awareness of women about the land rights that they already have. There's a whole bunch of measures, structural measures, starting education and mobility, etc. And I think that's it from me. And I hope this introduction was not too boring for you. And now we're going to the rest of the official session this afternoon, and I'm handing back to our moderator. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudia, for opening remarks. We need to reach out to women, have them benefit, empower them, and we transform them. That's how I can summarize our speech, our presentation. I'll take the opportunity to invite the next presenter, a representative from Ministry of Agriculture, perspectives on soil health. I have a representative around and give us some brief remarks. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Madam. I think who has been here. We want to recognize the partners from World Bank. I can see John here. Also from Agricultural Policy Research Center. Congratulations for being birthed. We've been having IFPRI. Now we have IFPRI. Colleagues from government ministries, departments, agencies, narrow academia, private sector. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I am Alex Luakuba, I'm Commissioner Crop Production Department. I didn't know that I would be here. But you know, as a civil servant and a royal civil servant who has worked with government for the last 37 years, if you like, well, I cannot object. I cannot refuse. I cannot decline an instruction. I have to do what? To abide and comply. So I was requested to come here and represent Honorable Minister of State for Agriculture, Major Retired Fred Wino Chakulaga, MP Chigulu North. And I was at a certain meeting where I was giving a keynote address. And a discussion related to what we are doing here, or what we are here for. So I'm that flexible. And I'm here talking about a resource that I know very well and I'm passionate about, soils. In Uganda, because I come from Ministry of Agriculture, I bring you greetings. I know there are colleagues here from agriculture. I want to bring you greetings from my colleagues. Major General retired, Kasura Chomokama David knows that we are here. And I bring greetings from them. The other technical staff. The political leaders, you know where they are. They are struggling to do what? To sustain their, unite. So they are struggling, looking for opportunities to continue to be where they belong. Nonetheless, we are here. And now I don't have any prepared presentation like the madam who has been here. But because of my experience, you will allow me to speak off cuff. As far as I know, we are here to talk about soil health. Soil health. In Uganda and in agriculture, we have a problem. And the key problem to our agriculture, among others, is production and productivity. We have low production, low productivity. What are the causes? And some of the causes, I think key among those that you know, are responsible, irresponsible action, inaction, and omission. The way we utilize our soils is either irresponsible, we utilize them irresponsibly, or the way we use our soils, we use them with some omissions in terms of knowledge and skill, or we do it because we have to do it. Deliberate action, the way we use our soils. And this has led to widespread degradation, reported degradation, exhaustion, with even indicators. Some of you are researchers I can see here those who participated in the research with Professor Zaki. You have identified some areas and even maybe posted them to be suffering from negative nutrient balances. And I see Dr. I forget the name a little bit. Did you participate in that research? I suppose you did. I can see somebody there. I think you did. That Rakai. Rakai is one of those areas suffering from negative nutrient balances. We have areas like Kayunga, part of Kayunga, Iganga, Kumi. These areas suffering from negative nutrient balances and eastern Uganda, what are the indicators? The consequences, the indicators of exhaustion. Now what we are seeing. Striga is not coming out of nothing. That is one of the indicators. To some of us with little science, with small science. When you see striga, that's an indicator that that soil is exhausted. The fertility level has gone below the expected. How are other consequences? Then you see the yields. The yields we are realizing nowadays, we are obtaining nowadays. These are consequences of a degraded soil or degraded resources. But we have been cultivating with all the complacence and the political gimmicks. Uganda is a fertile country. We're blessed by nature, well endowed. And we continue with this song. The scientists are saying our soils are getting exhausted. Our soils are getting exhausted. They are getting degraded. Some people estimated soil erosion around the cost of soil erosion some time back. And we're losing about 400 million United States dollars annually through soil erosion. This was weighed and slayed and weighed. Sometime back, 1991, what is it now? What is the cost of degradation? If you take the total evaluation value, and if we have people who can evaluate environmental services, what is the cost of our land degradation? Who can put a figure? We shall be conservative, actually, to give a figure here. You know, the degraders of the land, those who degrade most are the poor. And land degradation leads to poverty. You can see the paradox of land degradation. The poor, the landless, because they have little to invest in this land. They have little to invest. It is not theirs. If they are just hiring land, they are using the land and then they go away. They don't put much effort into ameliorating what they have destroyed. The poor destroy, degrade more, and then they become more poor. They become poorer. Women and those that are landless, and majority who are landless, and who participate in cultivation, in food production, are victims of this poverty. And they are contributing to poverty in these countries because they are degrading. They are accelerating the degradation and therefore poverty. It is important, therefore, that you scientists and practitioners, development practitioners like us, come together and identify strategies for reversing these trends. In Uganda, in the ministry, yes, we are aware that production and productivity is low because of the way we are using the land resources. And in some of our policies, if you got the National Agricultural Policy, I don't have it here, I just remember that objective number 5, emphasizing the need to utilize the land resources sustainably. Objective number 5, if you could go there. Objective number 5 of the National Agricultural Policy, 2015, 2016, 2015, 20. Emphasizing sustainable utilization of our land resources, our soils. So we've come up also with some policies and strategies, and we emphasize sustainable utilization of soils. Before I start, recently we have even projects, Uganda Climate Smart Transformation Project, Uganda Climate Smart Agriculture. There are components on sustainable land management. We have things like conservation farming, agroforestry, but we have also other policies. You may not wish to hear this if you are from Agra, and the National Organic Agriculture Policy. And we are also coming up with the agroecology policy, because we would like to popularize, we would like to promote nature-based solutions that will address the issues that are subjecting our nature to destruction. Yes, we are glad. And I'm glad to mention that we have this African fertilizer and soil health action plan. And it calls unto us, the appeal unto us, the urges us to come up with those tangible solutions and investment to address soil health issues. Some of them are policies, and then they call for investment. I would like to make an appeal here before I even appreciate you for this study. I want to make an appeal that we need to identify and foster those inputs, soil health inputs and materials that can address regeneration of our nature. Yes, we can invest in organics, but let us address those that can regenerate nature. Me, I'm retiring soon. I'm speaking from some experience. Let us look and invest in the manufacture, in the dissemination, the distribution, in the utilization of amendment solutions that advance the regeneration of nature. Why should we depend on short-term fixes? Short-term fixes. So consider those solutions that are long-term. Solutions with positive residual effects to the environment. I will disappoint somebody who didn't want this kind of talk, but for me, I'm open and old because I'm going away. You know, what will you do to me if I speak facts? We want you to invest in solutions that are sustainable. In short, if you want to hear, to get the story, to understand me, want sustainable solutions to nature. Not short-term fixes. But also, we should encourage investments that are local. Solutions that are local. If we have manufacturers of these, the phosphates and so on, can they be a little bit local so that we reduce, so we improve on the affordability issue, affordability question, affordability to the majority of our farmers. Address affordability, accessibility, and then let us invest in capacity building, education, training. Do our people know how to apply these fertilizers? These should be the investment areas: manufacture, knowledge, capacity strengthening. I would like to thank IFPRI and INARO for conducting the study that has brought us here. The findings are invaluable to our policy formulation processes because they act as evidence that we reckon to make meaningful policies and interventions. I want to thank you very much for coming. Thank you for God and my country.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Alex Wakuba, for your nice presentation and giving us background information about soil health. I've just picked one word or two, that poverty increases soil degradation, which increases poverty. So we need to make sure that we fight poverty so that we get healthy soils. Thank you so much. Allow me invite the next presenter from IFPRI come and give us highlights on African soil health protection program. Thank you so much.
Yes, good afternoon, everyone. We've had some lunch. Good afternoon, everyone. Yeah, I'm happy to meet you this afternoon. And I would like to thank the previous speakers for setting the stage for me. I'm speaking about advancing soil health in Uganda, the role of research and the road ahead. My name is Florence Luisa. I teach in the Department of Agribusiness and Natural Resource Economics at Makerere University. But also I'm part of the team under the Agricultural Policy Center at Makerere University. As noted earlier, it is housed in the College of Agriculture and Environmental Sciences. So as I've introduced myself, that I'm coming from the Department of Agribusiness and Natural Resource Economics, the question we've been having, people asking us, so what are you guys doing in soil health? Why soil health, yet you're economists? And I say soil health actually matters. As presented by previous speakers, of course, there's a problem in Uganda. We see issues of degradation taking a center stage. About 51% of the arable land in Uganda is about degraded. Based on that reference, the commissioner talked about the losses in nutrients and gave a good elaboration of how much they need to actually look at how much we lose each year. But from the estimations given, we lose about 80 kilograms of nutrients per year, per hectare per year. In terms of fertilizer usage, of course, we are still ranking low in Uganda. Different authors have different statistics, but from the one I'm quoting, it's about less than 2 kilograms per hectare. Why? The reasons we know them: the expense, the access. In terms of the yield gaps, because of the declining soil fertility, it's still high. And that's why we think we cannot ignore soil health. Even as economists, we cannot ignore soil health. So Commissioner Wakuba set the stage for me, right? Talking about the different policies we have promoting soil health. So I'll just display just some of them. I'll not go through into detail of what they are. What you're trying to show here is that the government is doing something. Different actors have recognized the need to address soil health issues, including the government. Part of what the government has done is put in place variable policies. We have quite a number of them. Some are specific to agriculture, like highlighted in green, but then there are some that are overarching policies cutting across different sectors. And then some under different sectors, some in agriculture, but these are just, there's even more beyond this. What we're simply showing here, the policies from 20 years ago up to date, but there are even some earlier that were there. We recall the PIP, the PMA. So each of these had an issue promoting soil health, at least a component that talks about the need to promote soil health. So the song about soil health has become, it's from way back, more than 20 years ago up to date. It's still an issue that we need to consider. So at the national level, we have such number of policies and even quite more that maybe I didn't display here. But again, also beyond the national level, We also have commitments at the regional level, that is at Africa level. I tried to list some of them there. Again, looking at about maybe 20 years ago. Some are generally about agricultural sector that are specific with the soil health. We're looking at the CADAP from 2003. We've heard about that one before. They need to allocate 10% of the budget to agriculture. And of course, part of it goes into promoting agricultural production, through promoting activities related to soil health. But also looking at increasing agricultural growth by about 6% every year. Then from 2003, we had also the Abuja Declaration, I think around 2006. What came out from this that people have been talking about is a need to increase fertilizer use for the different African nations to about 50 kilograms per hectare. We had a meeting sometime, I think it was in March or April this year, in March, whereby many stakeholders were questioning how they came up with a target of 50 kilograms. Why 50 kilograms? What basis did the heads of state decide to agree to the 50 kilograms? So we have a target there, but there are still quite many questions to even justify the figures that we have. Later on, we had the Malabo Declaration, still as part of the implementation of the CADAP, again promoting accelerated growth and transformation. It was a 10-year strategy that is ending this year. So about 2014 to about 2025. And then beyond that, more recent, we have the African Union Fertilizer and Soil Health Farm Summit, looking at a 10-year strategy from 2023 to 2033 as elaborated by Claudia. So again, Claudia, thank you for setting the stage for me. So I'm not to go through the details of the Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health Action Plan. So it's a 10-year strategy, but was launched last year, 2024 in Nairobi, and has certain declarations that different African nations should abide to, including Uganda. And then, of course, this year, we also had the post-Malabo commitments, which we could have heard of the Kampala Declaration. Again, has certain clauses that commit us to really do something about soil health. Now, these are regional commitments, but from the normal English, what is a commitment? We all made commitments in different ways. It could be a marriage commitment, meaning you make a vow, you do what? You stick to the vow, you break it. When you make the vow, you stick to your vow and then live up to what you committed to do. So something for Uganda, we've had many commitments made, including the commitment for the Africa Fertilizer, to adopt the Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health Action Plan, which we need to actually commit to and be able to deliver since we made that commitment. And I say all of this simply, we need to track the national accountability to how far we are going in implementing these different plans. Next. Yes, so the Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health Action Plan, and I'm saying was launched last year. It's a 10-year beginning 2023, but was launched last year in May 2024. It was done at the Africa level, meaning different African nations committed to actually implementing the action plan. So beyond the Africa plan that was made, there was also a meeting for the East Africa, representatives from the East African countries, who adopt something that is suitable for East Africa. Some people who participated in this congregation here, so Dr. Kais is somewhere. I think was part of the team. Yeah, that participated in the development of the East Africa regional plan, that is deriving it from the Africa plan. Now, recently in March 2025, we also had another stakeholder workshop, bringing together actors from private sector, from government, from academia, research, coming together and seeing at the Africa-wide plan and the East Africa plan, and then deciding what we can do for Uganda. That is what we're calling domesticating. So it's not putting in place a new plan altogether, but rather trying to bring down what we have at Africa level to what is feasible for the Ugandan context. So setting priorities for Uganda, but also what is feasible with what we have and in the context of what we have here in this country. So for the Uganda National Action Plan, what is now there is, I would say it's like a draft plan that is yet to be validated. And of course, is aligned with the regional and continental frameworks. It has priority areas that we need to focus on, the outcomes, the different actions we need to put in place. Maybe just to summarize the Uganda National Plan. So what Claudia presented was the Africa plan at the AU level. So from the stakeholder workshop in March, what we came up with are the key outcomes for Uganda to focus on. And some of them are these. Because of limitations of time and space, we couldn't put all the plan there, but the key outcomes as outlined there. One outcome is improved policies and investments, looking at finance and markets also for sustainable soil health management, looking at greater efficiency and resilience and sustainable use of fertilizer and mineral inputs, looking at greater efficiency of organic use of mineral fertilizer and inputs, looking at institutional capacity being enhanced as the fourth outcome. So under these key outcomes, there were different outputs to do, and then different actions that we can do to realize the outputs. That is how detailed it is. So it was a 2-day discussion, but even after the 2 days, there's a lot to share in the 2 days that we didn't actually finish, all that we needed to do. That means to finalize this plan, that there's something that needs to be done. I think it's the next slide. So for the domestication, we are saying what remains to be done with, there's a draft plan in place, but again, we need to convene as stakeholders. One is to finalize with the monitoring and evaluation framework. As I mentioned earlier, having a plan in one place, implementing it is another, but then how do you track the progress in the implementation? There have to be some key indicators to show what we intended to do, what we've done, and maybe also justify why we did what we did. So looking at finalizing with the M&E framework, that is next in the agenda, but also having a stakeholder validation. So after digesting what we did and then coming up with a plan, then still present it. And I think there's still room to even improve the plan. Claudia presented, they need to include gender. And I realized that actually gender may not be one of the things that we put at the forefront when developing the plan. So maybe some sort of gender incorporation in what we intended to do. And then of course, putting up a steering committee, that is to put the plan into action. So a plan is simply on paper, but has to be put in place. For it to put in place is who will do the coordination. We are calling upon different stakeholders, but it has to be maybe a committee in place to coordinate the others. And then of course, securing the money to be able to implement different activities, but also coordinating different stakeholders to implement and even track the progress of the implementation. Maybe the previous. Yeah. So again, just saying that we have a plan in place, a draft plan that we hope to finalize in the next 1 month or so, maybe by the end of the next month, and have the stakeholder engagements also made. But what does it take to actually have a good plan implementation? Basing from what we've had as research, but also experiences in implementation of other commitments that Uganda has made, some things stood out. One is the political and institutional commitment. If you have a plan and people are not committed to implementing it, then don't expect miracle results. Having sustained financing to implement the plan, but also stakeholder engagements and partnerships. It is an ambitious plan, a big plan, but it takes more than one hand to actually have that plan implemented. So engagement of different stakeholders is key because each one of them contributes something unique to the implementation of the plan. But even then also the technical capacity and human resources to do the activities that we hope to do. Also having a clear operational framework, and then also communication and awareness, and then of course, evidence-based decision-making, as was emphasized from the morning presentations for those who are there, that we need evidence to plan what we need to do. We need evidence to show what we are doing and maybe the need for different policy changes. So beginning with the issue of seeing that evidence-based policy is important, that is when the issue of research comes in here. How do we get the evidence? It is through a research. And we are saying here that research should be the heart or key for implementation of any kind of agenda, be it a national agenda, be it an international agenda, be it a district agenda. Let it be research based. So evidence is key, and we get the evidence from research. Why is that important? Of course, when you have correct information, then you're able to have guided interventions or even decisions. They're informed based on what's actually existing in the communities. But again, also, research helps you to actually generate scalable as well as cost-effective solutions. See what has worked somewhere, and then how do you scale it up to also other areas. But we base that on research. If it worked, it can be scaled up. If it didn't work, and they don't need to scale it up, maybe learn lessons from that then you can then apply to other areas and maybe also to other interventions. But also then, of course, through research, we're able to do some monitoring as well as accountability for the work that we do. How do we justify to people? We're saying we need money to invest into this plan. When someone gives you money, they need accountability for that money. So what did you do with the money? How then do you justify what you did with the money? That means collect some data, do some research to show what you've been doing, keep track of what you're doing, keep record, and able to present that for accountability as well as monitoring. But again, also we're saying research helps us to connect with farmers' realities. The more interact with farmers as part of the stakeholders, then we know what they need, and then maybe do something, maybe interventions or policies that align with their needs. At the same time also, it helps us to remain aligned with our commitments that we made, that is in the region as well as continental, our commitments. So we are saying research is important, but what does the current research look like? And I'm zeroing it down to soil health research. I'm saying we had an intervention, we had the meeting in March. We gave opportunity for people to present research work that they are doing. From that, we realized so many lessons, that there's a lot of work going on related to soil research. A lot of informative research that we didn't know, everyone learning things that are new, what each actor is doing, the private sector, the farmer, the extension workers, the academia. So everyone is doing some sort of research. However, what we also found that most of the research efforts that we are doing actually isolated. That's a small cartoon to display that. Each one is doing their own thing in their own corner. When you have a step or maybe a meeting as this and people are able to present what they are doing, you get to learn what people are doing. But otherwise then, if there's no opportunity to share, then you will not know what the neighbor is doing, because we are all hidden in our own cocoons, doing what we are doing, which is not a bad thing. We are doing something, but we need to share. So you can learn from your neighbor's mistakes, you can share experiences, you can collaborate. So we are seeing research is fragmented and isolated, everyone is doing their own thing, but also having a weak alignment with policies. We do a lot of scientific research that may not necessarily speak directly to the policy priorities for the country. So maybe something that we need to work on to have policy relevant research. So you have your research, which is good in the field, in the labs, but how does that inform the policies? Who's the consumer of your research beyond just maybe having lab results and making publications? So also limited interdisciplinarity. We are doing each one of us something. We saw there's research that is in different disciplines, in the social economics, in the science, in the markets. But in terms of people working together as an interdisciplinary team, that was a bit missing. We are doing something in our small corner. As social economists, we do something economic. As scientists, we do our own scientific thing, but having teams that cut across, I think, was something that is still limited. But also, we also see that out of the work we are doing, also the research, so many innovations have been made, including the digital innovations, which we are still not using as much. We're still based on the soil science taught, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, but science has changed. We've evolved in many ways. So maybe they need to also look at to do research on using the different digital tools available, as well as modern technologies. But also innovations coming in from research, we are saying they are usually not scaled. They are done at a local level, but then how does that now apply to the bigger scale? Can they be replicated in other areas? That is still lacking. But also, again, we also see a weak feedback loop with extension farmers as well as with extension workers as well as the farmers. We have very good innovations. We saw all kinds of soil testing, the digital, the chemical ones, all types of things can be used for soil testing. But do the extension workers know about them? Not really. Do the farmers know about them? Not so many of them. So we are doing good research, getting new things, but do they trickle down to people who need to use them? That is still a gap in that area. But again, also we are saying also limited contribution to policy as well as planning. As I was saying, we do our work in our small cartoons, we publish, but does that link to policy? Not really. So what opportunities do we have? I began from the action plan, that we have a plan in place, that we would like to have it implemented for Uganda to be able to meet its commitments. We are seeing many things are important, including the research. We are seeing challenges in the research, but where are now the opportunities? And I'm saying for scientists, or for researchers, I'm putting research, for researchers, we could look at maybe having collaborative research as well as innovations. Each of us has something to contribute. Maybe interdisciplinary research would be the way to go. Looking at evidence policy influence. As we do research, maybe we questioned before whether it actually aligns to what Uganda is committed to implement in the next 5 years, the next 10 years. Look at capacity building and extension, both for the workers, extension workers, as well as the farmers. Look at some kind of data infrastructure development, maybe putting in place the soil databases, different fertility maps. There's a long discussion regarding this. You know, different institutions are putting up their own databases. So which one then do you refer to if in case you want to make your research? Because everyone has their own database. So maybe having maybe a few that can be, where data can be collected and anyone has access to that information for decision making would be good. But even then we think that things like the joint dissemination of different programs and innovations, our results, could be the way to go also. We have something to show, so we have something to show, we work together and we disseminate together. So as IFPRI, how do we come in here? Prof gave a detailed definition, explanation of what the IFPRI is doing, but we see the center as having a role as one of the stakeholders. We also think that we have a role, one in supporting data-driven as well as policy relevant soil research interventions. Economists like to deal with data, so we are saying, can we have a database where we can play around with that data? We have people willing to play with the data, but then we can't find the data because everyone is doing their own thing hidden somewhere. But they can offer support in conducting policy relevant soil, policy relevance soil data analysis for soil health. But also in policy support as well as coordination. So far, the IFPRI played a role, of course, together with the culture and other actors, are trying to put together different actors to say something about the action plan. It could also do that, but also depends on what the steering committee will decide, who takes on the lead in steering the others. But so far, at least the IFPRI has played a role. But also maybe in facilitating different stakeholder planning workshops at different levels, but also generating the evidence, and even maybe supporting different analysis in terms of stakeholder engagement, but even outreach as well as advocacy. We see ourselves also playing a key role in that. So as part of the outreach that the IFPRI plans to do, together with other partners, the Ministry of Agriculture, there's something we are calling the Farmer Know Your Soil campaign. This is like a nationwide flagship initiative to raise awareness about soil health. But we are saying we are steering this for the beginning, but it may depend on what partners choose, who takes on the lead in this. What we are envisaging is having an initiative, or like a countrywide drive, where we go district by district talking about issues of soil health. So in partnership with MAIF, as well as other research institutions, the academia, different soil labs, but even the private sector, we are saying everyone who has something to showcase, this would be the opportunity. If maybe you're having a drive in Ginger, so all actors in Ginger, those who can make it to Ginger, we have one stage whereby we can be able to showcase our innovations, invite farmers, do different soil testing for the farmers, and even hoping that the data we get from these different soil testings can be fed into a database that everyone can be able to access and make decisions. So activities will include maybe mobile testing labs, localized messaging in different languages, different music caravans, something enjoyable, farmers composing songs about soil health, doing trainings, demonstration of different innovations. And of course, we are hoping that for stakeholders who participate in this, one, we hope to get maybe enhanced awareness of the different soil health challenges. That is two-way for the farmers to know that they have a problem. Even those who think their soil is fertile, when they do some soil testing, they can realize that actually maybe they were wrong, need to do something about the soil. So for the farmers to be aware about the status of their soils, but also for the promoters who are the private sector, the researchers, to know what farmers' issues are. So we hope to showcase different innovations and technologies. Through that, maybe able to also scale the innovations, since it's a countrywide drive, so you can showcase in different districts of Uganda, maybe also influence policies, but also then also having some multi-stakeholder collaboration in this campaign. So it is one of the initiatives we're hoping to do in under the outreach arm of the IFPRI. So what we need to do, I'm looking at this picture here, and I think that we need to work together. We might be at different levels. Maybe some have done a lot of research at a higher level, higher level innovations. Some may be not so, maybe at a lower level, but at least we can support each other to be able to present something and also work as a team that is working together for soil health, resilient farms, and even secure the futures. And we are saying who, and I'm saying everyone can play a role in this. Right from the farmers, we have the government, we have the private sector, we have the development partners, the academia, civil society, researchers. Everyone who has something to say about soil, this is the opportunity to join the collaboration. So with those few words, I want to thank you for listening to me. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much, IFPRI, for your presentation. Whoever would be interested in her presentation, you can reach out and you get a copy. Just like any other presentation, in case anyone wants a copy of the presentations, please feel free to reach out to the presenters themselves or the technical team with authentication from the presenters. Without wasting much time, I can see we're running short of time. We need to conclude this workshop by 4:30, and we have, I think, 1 hour to go. I request the next presenters to use not more than 15 minutes. This juncture, allow me welcome a presentation from Dr. Nesmus from the head Soil Science Department, NARO. Thank you so much, Doctor.
Thank you so much once again. Colleagues, good afternoon. I know we have listened so much on soil health, and we're all talking about the same message. And the message we already know, that we are mismanaging our soils. Simple. The poor soils that we inherited from our grandfathers is all gone down. And it's time to do something. And I'm glad we are doing something. So the old practices of slash and burn, continuous cultivation, not all the practices, but these things are still going on. It's time to turn away from those practices and do things better. And I'm glad our governments are doing a lot of work. Mr. Rakuba clarified a lot of efforts, policy interventions that clearly show that government is doing something, is committed to doing something. And not only policy. We all know that government supports a number of projects aimed at improving productivity, and they're sinking a lot of money. And it's time to utilize all these initiatives so that we manage our resources better, to increase productivity, support our growing population, so that we don't have to, continue begging for handouts. The IFPRI has been quite instrumental in contributing to policy changes in the region, actually internationally. One of the key studies that I remember IFPRI carried out is assessing the nutrient balances in different parts of the country for Uganda's case. And the study found that all the agroecological zones had negative nutrient balances. And not only that, all the land use practices, be it perennials, being annuals, all negative nutrient balances. And for a growing country like ours with a growing population, we cannot continue like this. It's time to do something, and they urge ourselves to do better. So I thank IFPRI team for doing this research, which is going to be presented, and we look forward to the results. I'm also grateful to contributions from IFPRI. That was a very good presentation. Thank you, ID's team. Also other teams for doing the excellent work. I can't forget my colleagues from NARO. They're doing good work. And of course, the farmers. You give us what to do. Thank you so much for these contributions. I don't want to take any more time. I'll let my colleague continue. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doctor. We need an energizer. I think people are a little bit. Can we stand up and stretch for just 1 minute as just stretch. Please. Good. Thank you so much. We're going to the core of this study. We're going to share the evidence-based research findings from the soil health survey that was carried out last year. And I request the team to be attentive, because after that we shall entertain questions and answers from both the presenters and so according to our schedule, Dr. Ebanyat is supposed to take us to the next session about the long-term changes in Uganda soil health conditions and women responses to land degradation. I don't know that Doctor, you are prepared to take us to that. Then we shall have, actually, we have 3 presenters in that section: Dr. Ebanyat, Dr. Kaizi, and Mr. Kato. Thank you so much. Sorry for that. In the meantime, I want to appreciate everyone for your patience, for your time, and abiding by the rules of the house, the rules of engagement. At least we have no disturbances, no phones ringing, and we are all attentive. Like I said before, this is the core of the workshop. So let us kindly pay attention and take notes of the findings, and we'll be ready to welcome the questions and have them answered as well. You're welcome, Doctor.
Thank you, moderator, and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Peter Ebanyat, and I'm a senior lecturer from the Department of Soil Science and Land Use Management. So I'm here to share with you some evidence regarding our soils, and particularly with the quest that we need to improve and sustain productivity, and certainly using the approaches of intensification. But I think the key message is that, yeah, we need inputs. These inputs could be organic, these inputs could be mineral fertilizers, but in any case, do we really apply them in a way that brings about efficiency? Because now we have a major concern about environmental integrity as well. So when we're using these inputs, I think we need to become really very context specific and not just doing blanket application of the inputs. So it's very interesting in the Bible, you're told that you have to sweat to eat until you go to the ground. Out of that soil you came, out of that soil you live, and you return to that soil. So there is no one who can expect to eat food without necessarily getting this food from the soils in one way or the other. So the concern for us is that we should actually care for these soils. So we've been going through the policy aspects that need to be considered so that we can care for these soils. but here is a bit of evidence to give you the context. Please, next. Now, for those that are engaged in farming seriously in this country, you'll realize that if you went across various agroecological zones, often there are specific type of fertilizers that you'll commonly find. And it's like they are a blueprint to be used everywhere. You'll find DAP, you'll find urea, you'll find NPK. And of recent, there is a proliferation of use of foliar fertilizers. And sometimes some of them are not even fertilizers in any case. They may be enhancing other aspects of crop growth rather than actually providing nutrients. But we do not know. And for a local farmer who does not actually have knowledge on this, they are actually fleeced. So what is our role if we are the people who actually have the knowledge in these areas, that we can actually help in the process so that there is actually value for money, but at the same time, we can actually improve our productivity. The use of fertilizers, as has already been said, is actually low and linked with some of the issues which are actually beliefs. We keep singing and saying our soils are very fertile. I don't know whether it is so everywhere. Where I come from, they are not. I come from Eastern Uganda, from a district called Ngora, and the soils are really very poor. Please, let's go ahead. So when you get to even small farms, what you'll realize is that there is a lot of variability in fertility, and farmers recognize this variability. The recognition of that variability is seen in the way they choose the different fields for them actually to plan their production activities. There are crops that they will just relegate to very poor soils. And there are those that they will be saying, I think this soil may be moderately fertile, so we can actually target the production to such. So that variability is as large within and between farms as it would be the case in agroecological zones. And that means that it should underpin how we actually help to improve the use of the inputs that we have in improving productivity. Next. This is just an example. We did some work in Palisa, and we're looking at responses of millet to application of fertilizers, and of course looking at also the use of manure and combinations of that. That agroecological zone, from the literature, that was existing was that it is only nitrogen and phosphorus that you need. And for a long time, that has been the case. So if you applied nitrogen and phosphorus, you are going to get better yields for a crop like finger millet. But our results didn't seem to show that case. And we saw that in those systems, in areas where they had done night corralling, animals had been kept in kraals over a period of time. Those would be the areas you'd actually get the best yield responses of your millet without even actual application of what? Application of nutrients. And that speaks a lot of issues, because sometimes we might just be thinking of nutrients, but it could be other aspects of fertility, because fertility is not only nutrients. It also has the physical aspects, it has the biological aspects. And it's a high time that we begin actually to embrace that approach than just thinking that we take a reductant dimension of saying, yes, we just need to apply nutrients. Because in this graph, you'll see that even when you apply nitrogen and phosphorus, yes, in one of the sites, you could get responses, but in another, you may not, that are very different from the control where you applied nothing. And eventually, you try to combine with manure. I think the responses were still also not, improved, but not very good. Simply because what's the quality of manure? If manure is coming from grasslands that are actually poor, I mean, you're just recycling poverty. You're having crop residues that don't have nutrients in them. So what are you actually getting through the manure? In addition to the management of that manure, which is exposed to all the sunshine, exposed to rain, and that actually worsens the quality. So next, please. So what we then see is that in those places, unfortunately, I don't have a pointer, but what you could see is that in one of the sites, you probably needed to be actually applying sulfur in addition to NPK. In another site, NPK would actually work. So it meant that just looking at nitrogen and phosphorus alone is not enough. So we actually have problems of multiple nutrient deficiencies in our soils. And this will relate to the different crops. So now that we're prioritizing different commodities or different crops in this country, do we actually know how we should produce those crops in the different locations or different sites? And that means that we should invest in characterizing these areas and getting to know what we are addressing, rather than just going blanket, apply DAP, apply NPK, but you don't know what else could be an issue. Next. Please, next slide. Okay, so this is some other work that we did with soybean in central Uganda here. And what we noted is that, yes, farmers recognize the variability in fertility within farms. And this was actually in the area of Chankwanzi. But what we see here is that, again, that the deficiencies of nutrients will actually, thank you. You just have actually differences in terms of the order in which we need to apply the nutrients. And that means that those that are producing, say, fertilizer blends need this kind of information so that they get the right fertilizer blends that are going to actually help for different crops in different locations. Next. So again, use efficiencies of the nutrients are affected largely because of the amount of organic matter that is present in soils. So that could be one of the metrics in soil health. And there are many metrics that actually are meant to be considered in soil health. But soil organic matter seems to be one of those that actually stands out. So in some instances, yes, but there are also questions about organic matter. What is the quality of that organic matter that we are talking about? Because you might find it is high, but the quality is not that which is good actually to supply the nutrients. But generally, use efficiencies of applied fertilizers would be improved when you have higher amounts of what? Higher amounts of organic matter in the soils. Next. And with this work, don't worry about those graphs, forget about the statistics. But I'll just say a simple message that it seems that for different soils, probably in different systems, there are thresholds of organic carbon or organic matter that would be useful for you to actually apply your external fertilizers. But do we know that? That's where actually research should be of great help to find out such information and is used in supporting the extension activities. So that varies for different soils. So while we just think we're working on this soil, they are different. They are different. Just like we're different here, and yet we are all human beings. Next. So again, this is really with the coffee and seeing that the variability in terms of deficiencies of coffee across the country are different. And that would actually bring about the grouping of areas that could become actually management zones in trying to address coffee challenges in terms of the nutrition. Next. This is, again, really looking at now, if we want to be using whatever the fertilizers, whatever the blends that we come up with, we need to know where the opportunities are. Because in some of the areas, you could try to do much, but if other factors are not actually good enough, you may not get actually much benefit. So here, we're dealing with legumes and particularly soybean across different agroecological zones in the country. Can you go to the next slide? And the main message that was coming across from here, next. The main message that was coming across in this case was that when we use application of inoculants, which are actually out of a bacteria called rhizobia, we produce them at Makerere, and combine that with a phosphorus fertilizer, your best performance would actually come from the northern moist farmlands. Those are the areas of Lira, Gulu, Apache that area. And then you'd probably be followed by some areas in West Nile. But we're not doing very well in some of the areas. And sometimes we think we can promote anything, anywhere. That is not really very helpful. There should be also targeting and looking at the opportunities that arise out of use of those inputs. Next slide. So I think maybe I may not talk about this, but this is an issue of groundnut. And we find that the differences in responses are with the agroecological zones, but not to the inputs. Giving us a big question to the groundnut researchers. Are the varieties that are actually produced responsive to the inputs, or they are not? Because if they are not, you may not be able to get as much. So there is a combination of issues in intensifying productivity that you have to be looking at the genotypes that you have to be looking at the soils that you have, and you have to look at the management practices that you take, which are actually related to the characteristics of the soil and of course the environment. Next. We have actually now to try to look at what do we need to do. And I want to opine that these are some 4 key areas that need to be thought about as we look at adapting this African soil health program, particularly for Uganda. Let us invest in assessing soil quality, because that is the benchmark with which you should be able to develop your interventions. You don't walk to a health facility without them trying to do a diagnosis of what your problem is. But for us, we think with soils, you can throw anything. Yes, you'll throw anything there. It is quiet, cannot tell you anything, but you'll not also get something out of it. Then based on that, can we develop appropriate fertilizer blends? And that is where industry really needs to be collaborating with the research institutions to make sure that you have the right information. So much as we have concentrated on soils data, I think there is a need that at this time, we need to have plant data also taken into account for us to be able to develop those fertilizer blends appropriately for particularly balanced nutrition. Balanced nutrition is not saying 50, 50, 50. No, there should be ratios within plants that actually lead to you getting the optimal yields. And then there is a lot of knowledge that is required, because if we've seen these are the problems, the users of the soil actually now know how to intervene, how they make choices with the different options that could be available. And yet, if they worked with them well, they can actually come up with better outputs and outcomes. And finally, yes, you need models that will help you to promote these blends. And those models will depend on the economics, they will depend on the business environment, they will depend on the climatic conditions, they will depend on the soils. And I just want to give an example as I conclude. Next slide. One of the things is that we should keep learning. If we fail to learn, then we'll actually also fail to progress. So even when you have developed these blends, are you getting a feedback on actually how they are performing in the different areas? What adjustments might be required? And this needs to be done periodically so that you can still get back and make your adjustments over a period of time. Just like soils here, the surveys were in the 60s. So some attempts to improve, the classifications for some of them, but this is something which needs to be continuous because fertility changes. So knowledge of adaptation and adoption is very important. And that requires that there should be strong M&E systems that should feed into the research and design processes for you to actually improve, and building the capacity of the users actually to use the inputs that you actually generate. So lastly, there are 4 pillars that we propose out of the research, and that's the very last slide, please. Yes. We've seen that out of the many studies that we have done, you need to combine these aspects in terms of how you could be able to promote your blends. Number 1, the user's capacity. First of all, to understand the soils and to improve those soils, to manage those soils is very important. What are the systems to make inputs that are relevant based on the specific cases and challenges that they have in their areas actually available? What are the input supply systems and how do they work? And then for whatever knowledge that you have, how can that actually be disseminated? And this is where extension is actually very, very important. How is that actually disseminated? And lastly, for people to have the incentive to utilize these inputs, they need to look at the benefits that they have. So access to output markets becomes very important. Ladies and gentlemen, that's where I can stop for now. And I want to thank you for listening to me.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ebanyat, for your nice presentation. I invite the next presenter, Dr. Kaiser, if you are ready. And I request that we minimize time because we have less than an hour to go. And we still have 2 more presenters, Doctor. Thank you.
Thanks very much, colleagues. Good evening. I'll try to obey the rule of the game because what I've presented, what I'd prepared has been said. So this is our contribution as NARO, Makerere University, IFPRI, UBOS, because we started the journey together in 2003. So we are continuing. So we are presenting evidence that soil health is changing. So next. So the commissioners mentioned agricultural productivity and production productivity is low. The factors are there. Soils are low and declining. Initially, our soils are poor. Adoption of high yielding insect technology is next to impossible. Although technologies are not being adapted, but even the agronomic practices, the balimisas of a long time ago have disappeared, plus other factors. Next. So there we are. That's fertilizer use in Uganda. That's the World Bank document 2022. This is where we are. I think World Bank data is here. We believe in it. So we are less than 2 kilograms per hectare per year. That's World Bank. So next, I think we don't know whether we're doing well. Yet the ministry, I think let's agree when talk about fertilizers as soil science, we believe we mean both organic and inorganic. Let's not to be unfair, because whenever people talk of fertilizers, they think it is inorganic. Let's try to be fair to the system. The fertilizer by definition is what you add to the soil to supply nutrients to the plant, to improve plant health, to get better quality product and high yield. Whether inorganic or organic, you baptize it. Whether it is a reverend, a father, or a sheikh, it is up to you. We proceed. So the potential of using fertilizers, organic and inorganic, have been recognized, and the government has tried and is trying. There's no way we are going to achieve agro-industrialization without using inputs. Next. So, but when we are using fertilizers, we shall achieve food security. However, fertilizer use efficiency is low. Peter has mentioned that even 30% is on the high side. So 70% of the nutrients, whether from organic or inorganic sources, the plants don't take them up. They are lost into the system. So we need to go for the 4 R's, right source, right quantity, right time, and right nutrient stewardship. Dr. Banyat has emphasized knowledge. Without knowledge, like a treating headache with chloroquine or quinine. So next. So what we are looking at within this study, we are monitoring or providing evidence to long-term changes in soil health condition and make recommendations to the African Fertilizer and Soil Health Action Plan. Next. So where we are doing this work, as I said, we started in 2003 in 80 agroecological zones, which are presented there with Western Arua, Mid-North, Eastern Uganda, Lake Victoria Crescent, Barara, up to Kabale Kisoro region. That's the area which is covered. We are collecting socioeconomic and hard science data. So it's really a very good data set and valuable to the country. I always thank IFPRI for continuing with this initiative. Next. So what we did for us, narrow, we are handling the soils component. We are doing some selected parameters in the interest of time. I'm not mentioning them. After that, after the parameters, already my Director General, actually the guy didn't introduce himself as a Director General, Dr. Samaruru. When a boss sends you, you should always mention that your CV improved by a few seconds. So never hide that title. I wish you had sent me. I would have mentioned this. So now we are doing soil nutrient balance as an indicator. So among the parameters for soil fertility in tropical soils, we have organic matter and soil pH. It's what I'm presenting. So next. But you realize that they talked of different soil analytical methods. Why we are using wet chemistry for this study is because that's what we started with in 2003. So we decided to continue with the same methodology so that we don't change. So as we said, nutrient balance, we estimate them using 4 inflows and 5 outflows. Next. So analysis, we do it at Kawanda. Next. In the interest of time. So we present why we saw organic matter, as I've mentioned. It plays a key role, chemical, biological, and physical, which caters very well for soil health condition. And soil pH influences the chemical processes, nutrient availability, and drives all the processes in the soil. Next. So that's what we are doing in nutrient balances. This is where we do direct measurements, because our colleague from Delta, for the team where Dr. Mr. Sebufu presented, they are here. We are collecting different parameters. Some of those measurements, we do them directly. Others, we use pedal transfer functions. I'm not going to bore the audience with our core soil science. Next. So these are the results you are getting. So our base year is 2003, in the middle 2004, 14, and 2024. That is the average soil pH from the different agroecological zones. You realize the decline, what we see the trend, there's a decline in soil pH, which is actually a worry within the East African community. Already, so addressing soil pH is a high priority within the East African community countries. And the decline looks, one might think that is tiny, but pH is on a negative log scale. It might look tiny, but when you transform it, it is a very big what? Decline. You see, 2003 to now 2024, the trend, there's a decline in soil pH. So our friends, the fertilizer blenders, we need to include lime among the recommendations. As Peter said, you can fertilizers, whatever, but if there are other constraints, and now pH is coming in. Next. Now, our favorable pH for plant growth, because below 5.2 from our predecessors in research, the soils require liming. You realize that the percentage, there is a decline in the percentage of soils which are in the suitable range. That's you see, compare 2003 and 2024. So you can see the different sets. The trend is there's a decline in the percentage of the soils which are in the suitable range across the 8 agroecological zones. This is evidence coming from the field. Our presidents always want data, not siasa ya kujenga inchi. So we are providing hardcore. That's why he's giving some science good money to provide this evidence to the planners. Next. Now, okay, above, these are soils with the pH, when the pH goes above 7.58, it has also some problems. Next. That is the pH below 5.2. You realize in 2024, the fields which require liming are now increasing. That's the trend. Although they are less than 20, but I think they are increasing. That's a change, an indicator out there. Next. Then for the soil organic matter, as Peter said, the change is really not that much. But even Professor Dr. Sally, when he revisited the sites which they were covered in the 60s and early 70s, when they are doing some work on soils, they had observed that there is a slight change in the soil organic matter. But already, even if you can, because when you sample charcoal, it is organic carbon, but it is not. So that parameter, you have to be very careful. If resources allow, we go for particulate organic matter. That's the active organic matter. So that's why, although the changes are not coming very well, forget about that in Barara area where we are, the percentage is hitting almost 8. I think there should be a problem. But I think the indicator, organic matter is not really changing much. Let's next. What you see there, or what I think there's a slight increase in the soils whose pH, whose organic matter is below 3%. Below 3%, the organic matter content in Uganda soils is low. So that soil is low fertility. The increase we see in 2024, it means that our fertility is going down. That's evidence from the field. So we need really to work as stakeholders to contribute to the African fertilizer and soil health. Next. So that's the category. That's 3 to 6. That's average standard soils of average fertility. As I've said, organic matter doesn't change much. Next. Then above, it is really not much. Next. So as the way forward, we have to complete the soil analysis. I think we have to accept there are some logistic challenges because we are using wet chemistry and some logistics which we have sorted out. We determine the nutrient balances and then deliver what we promised. And also we make recommendations because reality, comparing a 20-year data set, we expect to get very good recommendation when we consider other parameters too. And also work with the stakeholders in the country to contribute the action plan with African fertilizer and soil health. So you gave me 10 minutes and hope I have covered what I had to present within 10 minutes. Thanks very much, sir. I would like to thank Mr. Sentumbwe for the excellent work. He was our foot soldier when doing the sampling.
Thank you so much, Doctor, for your presentation and things to do with soil. I am not really confident with them, so I will not make a lot of conclusions and summaries. But for the interest of time, let me welcome the next presenter as the soil scientists take notes of the questions they want to, they feel should be addressed more. Mr. Kato, you are most welcome.
Yes, so I'm going to complement the efforts that Kaiza has presented. So in this presentation, we are still focusing on women. We all agree, I think from Kaiza's evidence, that there is land degradation. Land is becoming infertile. The question I'm answering here is that, are women responding to that? Are women taking action on what is happening on their lands? So how long term is this study? This study is actually long term. We began in 2003. We went back in 2013 under the University of North Carolina in the US. And we now went back last year, 2024, working with IFPRI and NARO. And this is where we went. All the samples Kaiji was talking about, we picked soil samples from all these areas you see here. Areas with good market access, areas with poor market access. We picked samples from areas with high population, areas of low population. Then we picked samples from areas that are flat and areas that are highlands. For example, we go to these areas here. Then we picked samples from areas that receive high rainfall and areas with low rainfall. So basically, we covered most of the features of Uganda. We don't go everywhere in Uganda, but the features we used represent the country quite well. As you can see here, 20 years ago in 2003, we visited 849 families. These are the families we visited in Uganda. 20 years after, that's a long time. 20 years in the life of a human being is a lot of time. But 20 years in the life of a building is not a lot. So 20 years after, we followed up these families that we had in 2003. We have only been able to recover 785 families. So we have lost about 8% of the families. To what? Basically, due to migration, they migrated. It shocked me that some families in Kabale moved to Toro. That okay, families in Uganda moved. But largely, families in Uganda are more permanent. They are more permanent. That's what you're seeing here. So the other one was about family dissolution. A household head dies, the wife dies, and the family is dissolved completely. So we go there, and that family is no longer in that location. But by and large, families in Uganda are more permanent, and you find them there. So it is possible to do long-term studies in Uganda. Don't be there and get scared that you can't do it. Is possible. What is limiting is the money. We used about 500,000 shillings. 500,000. That's about how much in dollars? About $150 to track a household. To track a household. That's the money we spend. But otherwise, it is very possible to conduct long-term studies in Uganda of this nature. Now, much as we found those families that we tracked in 2003, a lot has changed. What has changed? What we are seeing is that the families that were male-headed have become female what? Headed. So in our sample, when we began the study, only 2 families, for every 10 families, 2 were female-headed. We go back now, they are almost 31%. So for every 10 families, 3 have become female-headed. So there is more feminization of agriculture happening in these families. Now, that is a challenge for soil health. In 2003, we had very many men controlling these families. We go back to the after, we are seeing women now in control of these families. And that trend seems to be increasing over time. And that has implications. As of now, 2024, as of today, what are we seeing in terms of practices? As of today, our the main plots. So we looked at the main plots, women plots, and joint managed what? Plots. As of today, men are dominating these practices. Irrigation. It's very small, 1%. You can imagine. Only 1% of the plots are irrigated. For women, we found nothing. Nothing. That's why the U gift is really very important. And this was the same situation, I think, in 2003. This is current. This is current. So many plots are dominated by these practices: irrigation, fertilizer, mulching, and crop residue. These are for the men. On women plots, women are dominating mainly, surprisingly and annoyingly, by crop rotation. Crop rotation. It's like we're still using a typewriter. Actually, men are using computers with fertilizer. Here, people are still using a typewriter. But anyway, crop rotation is the dominant on women, deep tillage, and where women are becoming shellfish. Men are shellfish on fertilizer and irrigation. Women are not seated. Women have become shellfish on cattle, animal what? Animal manure. That is now theirs in the family. That is theirs. For men, go with your fertilizer and irrigation. Women are going with their what? Animal manure. That's what you are seeing as of now. Whether I like it or not, that's what is happening. Now, oh. What's happening to my? Okay. Now, we are saying land degradation, the soils have become infertile. Are people seated? Are our people seated? No, people have taken action. There has been action on soil health in the past 20 years, both by women and men. Men are taking action, women are taking action, but that action is not sufficient. The action is just simply not sufficient. What are we saying? Irrigation, general irrigation has improved from 0.2 to 1%. That is 5 times. That's 5 times increase, but it's just only at 1%. What is causing us sleepless nights is the fallow. When we began in 20 years ago, following was about 20%. It has declined to 1%. People are no longer the following has reduced. What is causing that, you think? Population growth. Oh, wow. So we are seeing following has declined substantially. The other one, crop rotation is the dominant practice, is dominating. That's what's dominating for now. The other one is manure, animal manure. That one has doubled from 7% to 14%. That one is increasing terribly. Now, the other one, which is of great interest here, is on, of course, inorganic fertilizer. Inorganic fertilizer has increased, but of course, from 3% to 8 what? In 20 years, period. So that is almost 3 times. 3 times, but it is still very, very, very what? Very low. So our farmers are taking action, but they need a catalyst. They need to be catalyzed. They need support. They need interventions in the last 20 years. Yeah, what? Baby steps. Yeah, that is true. As I said, agroforestry. In 2003, when we began this work, agroforestry was very high, both on many plots and women plots. What are we seeing? Although agroforestry is still very high, the trend is it's going down. It's going down. That is a concern. Why are farmers disinvesting in agroforestry? It is still very high, but it's going down. What is causing that, especially on women plots? Women are not investing so much. It's still high, but it's declining. We need to find out why that is happening. And we don't have a quick answer to that. You can help us to validate some of these things. Fertilizer use. Fertilizer use has increased from fertilizer use has increased in the past 20 years, both on women plots and many plots, but largely on many what? On many plots and joint plots, and less on women plots. On women plots, what is increasing largely is on organic what? Organic inputs. That's why women are catching up. Women are performing very well on organic inputs, but better than the many plots. So the many plots are receiving the fertilizer, the many plots are receiving the organic inputs. That's what you are seeing over time. Now, with all these changes you have seen, do they have an impact on poverty? How are we seeing the poverty? When we began in 2003, almost 60% of the women households were poor. Right now, they are moved from 59 and reduced to 20 what? 29. So poverty has reduced. Poverty has reduced among both women and men in the past 20 years. And overall in our sample, poverty is now standing at 18%. According to the government reports, poverty is at, overall in Uganda, right now in Uganda, poverty is at 16%. So our sample is around there. It's not behaving different from the rest of the country, that's 16%. But what you are saying is that poverty has reduced among both women and men, but it's still much higher in what? In women. As you can see, 29, this is 14%, the reduction. So women are still having challenges, maybe because of the inputs we are showing there. But otherwise, in the last 20 years, I think things have been good. I've been quite okay in Uganda, but yeah, we still have challenges there. I'll ask you to come and talk about the conclusions of this. Okay, take up that. Okay, conclusions. You are saying that a large range of sustainable and management practices can be found, but shares of these are still very, very low. And secondly, is that application of most practices have increased over time. But following is still puzzling. There's reduction in people using fallow. Then agroforestry is a very bad practice, but its use is declining. Agroforestry is declining over time. Then inorganic fertilizer has increased among both men and women, but it's much slower on women. And we need more efforts to address the feminization of agriculture on these things. Next steps of our work, this is still work, this work is still preliminary. We are going to combine Kaiji's information and our information to do more deeper analysis. We want to combine the biophysical data that Kaiji has and our information to do all that. Then we want to provide inputs to the localization of the African fertilizer and soil health strategy in Uganda. We want to provide some input there. And I think that's enough for today. Any questions?
Thank you so much, Mr. Kato. I welcome questions and
Yeah, mine is a comment. I also brought up this comment when we last had our meeting at the Sheraton. It's about capacity building. Soil as a subject is very, very important because it's where work starts, both for food, even for pastures that are given to livestock. There is no much research being done in relation to pastures, soil health and pastures. Yet it's very important. When it comes to capacity, last time we said very few students are specializing in issues of soil. We have very few pedologists, people that are studying soil chemistry, soil biology. I was in Southern Africa the other weeks, as I told you. And in Malawi, Zimbabwe, I took initiative with Professor Majaliwa, who is a soil scientist. There is only one Ugandan student in Luwana in that region studying, specializing in soil, and is already attached to a lab in South Africa, meaning he's not going to come back to our laboratory. He's called Dennis Kamoga. We need to interest our students to study soil, to specialize in these soil issues. Many of the students do not want. Under the Centers of Excellence, I was asking Professor Dema, how many students do you have? We have scholarships from the World Bank. He said, no, Ugandans are not interested. I have from Ethiopia, what Ugandans are studying plant breeding. When they're studying plants, they're going to be, the soil is the starting point. So in our 10-year strategy, I wish we could put an interesting factor for people to specialize in soil issues. We have the same people, Dr. Banyat, Dr. Kaizi, and as Dr. Kaizi said, we need to build capacity of people so that when others retire, these ones can come. So we need really to interest our people. Makere has one of the best labs in the region and can accommodate many students. The other time the professor was around, he also said there are very, very few. At Uganda Matters, all the students that came for scholarships, I asked Dr. Variebeka, who used to work with Naro. He's now working with us, supervising students. Students were from Liberia. The one defending his PhD tomorrow is from Burkina Faso. Said Ugandans are not interested in specializing in this area. And it is an area that we need so much. When it comes to poultry, for example, the biggest input, whether we shall have mukene or the black soldier fly as an additive, the biggest input will be from maize bran. The quality of maize is very much determined where it is grown. So we really need to look at the factor of capacity for our people to get these specializations that the Dr. Kaizis have, that the Dr. Ebanyats have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for your submission. I will come more comments and questions. Please pass over the mic.
Yeah, Dr. Hillary from Green Pulse Limited. I'm just inquiring, maybe from on this data. It's very interesting data. To what extent was the Bureau of Statistics, UBOS, involved? Today, I was suffering to get information. I work for Green Pulse, which is a subsidiary of Kepler-SS in Germany. They have projections up to 2030 for Uganda. We went to check for information on the website, on the internet. You can't get information. It's only up to 2022. And yet there's very rich information here you're sharing. Dr. Kaiz is sharing. UBOS is not involved. And yet their reference points are UBOS FAO. It really embarrasses. So I'm just inquiring, to what extent are they involved in this?
Thank you so much. It has been taken care of.
Yes, I have had all the presentations. Mostly they are referring to soil. But most of the fertilizers we are using these days currently, it is folio fertilizer or folio manure. Just get manure or fertilizer, you mix it with water, get a spray pump, then you just spray. We don't know whether they have negative or serious effects on human health, because food is for human consumption. So to what extent is Uganda National Bureau of Standards involved in this term called crop health and soil health? I want to understand, because even if you walk now to any agricultural input, you'll find everyone is advertising for your fertilizer. Even when you go to TikTok, even to this WhatsApp, I don't know, many people are producers of folio fertilizer. Are they producers or they are trying to survive? Yeah? Is this survival of the fittest? So to what extent is the National Bureau of Standards? Is it a sleeping giant there? But we are not safe. Not only soil is safe, but also human health is not safe, because we are consuming garbage. And I know it has a serious impact. Now I've been applying it. I can tell you. Last time I used over 5 jerrycans of folio fertilizer, spraying coffee. Like enough, you don't consume coffee a lot. But those who are consuming it, I don't know whether they are safe. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Yes. Thank you, Sam. This goes to Edward and other researchers here. including those from IFPRI like Dr. Bashasha. Members who are involved in data collection here will agree with me. Edward said that panel surveys are very possible, which is right. But I want to bring the attention of the researchers here that our respondents need real feedback. Edward, this study is very good, started 2003. And I can tell you when we went back, many of the farmers are saying, but we are not getting any feedback. Whereas we are having these boardroom discussions here, but these respondents, we are getting the data from and taking a lot of time to ask them questions. They need to get some feedback to know, you took my soil in 2003, you took the soils in 2013, you are coming back again, and you're only telling me this study is very important. And for me, I'm not getting any feedback. So it's really very important that some of these primary people who give us information get some simple feedback on how their soils are doing and what are they supposed to do. And that will really help us to continue the panel surveys. Like you were saying, to be able to get 8% attrition after 20 years is not a joke, but it requires, feedback to these respondents for them to be responsive every time we can go back to them. Thank you so much.
Thank you, George.
Thank you. My concern is about fertilizer consumption. I note Florence presented 2 kilograms per hectare, and then Dr. Banyait quoted 3 kilograms per hectare. Could we be underreporting our consumption in the country?
Yeah, thanks for this good presentation. And the study's long-term changes are really interesting. But I think my listening in what the soil science talked about, you need to test the soil, understand the crop requirements, and then reflecting on the diversity of crops we have in Uganda. I'm really scared whether we can push through to achieve impact given the context of Uganda. And therefore my question is, do we look at transforming the farmer to have farmers who can actually address the soil problems? Because I have an example from the bean program where I work, and in one of the countries in Malawi, we have a farmer who actually grows and exports for himself. This is beans. And many people who work on his farm are small-scale farmers. That farmer, through addressing agronomy, he grows the same variety and gets 3 tons per hectare. The small-scale farmers get 600 kilograms per hectare. When I asked him, how has those farmers around you benefited from what you're doing here? He was not able to answer. He only told me, but they work for me and they earn a salary. So thinking through that, I realized that some of these recommendations, they look very complex for the type of farmers we have. And that's why I'm asking, as a country, looking at a bigger picture at policy level, do we really try and invest to address soil problems, soil health issues with the small-scale farmers we have? Or we should be looking at transformative plans that create the farmer that can address the soil problems?
Thank you very much. My name is Alex Otut from Ministry of Agriculture. I have a few observations to make. First of all, I want to appreciate the various presenters for the insightful observations made. One thing I want to observe from the presentation, where we are able to see the number of women-aided households increasing. We should not be excited that women are now taking control. We must be concerned about the divorce rate that is increasing in the country. Another thing I want to highlight, I've been doing some small work, research on my own. I picked, I'm using soil deliberately from acidic site to do, to examine a few parameters. And it was interesting to see that the germination of beans in very acidic soil was really affected. Now, this comes to this study. Somebody without clear information about soil invests, you want to get so much, you put a lot of money, plant 50 acres, 20, whatever, without soil test, and your germination is reduced to less than 40%. Another thing which is interesting is when you apply fertilizer in that soil without lime, the viability of your seed is still significantly very low. So you would have invested in so many tons of fertilizer, but at the end of it all, you reap nothing. Now, for somebody who would want to say, I'm going to apply compost. This compost, if you do not know the right application rate, makes the soil so moist, interferes with the aeration, and still the germination is very poor. These were real site observations that I made on this study, which is very informative for a farmer. But our farmers are working blindly and they do not know this. Now, what is interesting here, emphasis has been made on the role of lime. If we saw one of the observations, lime was able to increase yield significantly in one of the studies Dr. Peter presented. And this is where people are missing out. They just come, plant, apply fertilizer without lime. At the end of it all, a huge quantity of the fertilizer is taken up to neutralize the soil first without benefiting. And that is what Dr. Kaiser was saying, that the nutrient use efficiency will definitely be reduced. Instead of 70, 80%, you get 30%. This would be a big loss in your investment. The last thing is about foliar fertilizers. We have many formulations in the market. Very few people understand the issue of salt index in foliar fertilizer. When you use foliar fertilizer, which has a lot of salt, there is what we call reverse osmosis. Instead of your crop taking more water, the water flows from the crop back to the soil because of too much salt you have applied in the what? In the foliar fertilizer. Now, at the end of it all, the farmer will say, my yield was instead lower than I would expect. Now, these are some of the scientific facts that we need to address. And this also goes to the issue of knowledge gaps. I thank you.
Thank you so much. We are running short of time. I request to take only 2 more questions. 2.
Okay, thank you. I just want to make about 2 or 3 comments or questions for that matter. The first one is on agroforestry. In 2003, during the workshop to present the dissemination findings for the baseline, I remember very well then in Konya, IFPRI in Konya, and then John Pender, and I think Jordan Chabalin was also there. One of the key findings was that land tenure policy impacted negatively on adoption of agroforestry practices. So I was just thinking and reflecting on that. Could this be the same thing that is playing out here this time around? Maybe we need to check on that. And then for the case of women, if a woman is having land that belongs either to the relatives or to the husband, then what, and she has the instructions that in this land you have to grow this and these crops, then perhaps she doesn't have the authority even to plant trees. The thing with the land tenure is, if your land tenure is not secure, then you are not incentivized to plant trees on a given piece of land. The other one I want to speak is about policy. We do research to generate evidence to inform policy-making process. My question has been, how, since we did a baseline, to what extent has or have the policymakers taken up the findings from this study to inform policymaking processes? You know, to come up with the policies that support the implementation of soil health enhancement strategies, for example. I know that we're making baby steps, but I think the baby steps are not good enough. Perhaps, who knows, maybe the rate at which land degradation is happening may overtake the baby steps that we're making. So what is it? What if the policymakers are really taking into considerations the findings that we're generating? Why are we not making that progress that is going to cause the impact that we're looking for? If the policies are there, what's the problem? Is it implementation? Is it resource allocation, budget resource allocation for implementation of the policies, or capacity to implement the policies? Or there's lack of political will to, to support what we're doing. So I think there's something that we need to unearth around that. And then lastly, the issue of the acidity increasing. I just wanted to check with my dear friend Kaizi whether we have a digital soil map showing soil acidity that we can share with the policymakers, that they can see and really see that this part of the country is having high soil acidity and therefore needs an urgent intervention in terms of liming and so forth. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks very much. Those ones who came in later in the afternoon. I'm called Bianca Issa, Sanders Production Office of Kriandongo. Mine goes one on capacity building. The area concern was about people not taking up PhDs, but to me that's not a big deal. To me, capacity building should focus on extension workers who are in direct touch with the farmers. What we can do in our action plan, we can have capacity building of all district agricultural officers who are the subject matter specialists in the district, and they're available there so that they can be able to guide their colleagues in the sub-counties on issues of soil and how to advise the farmers. We are lucky that these projects that are coming up, like Climate Smart Project Commissioner, is going to put up a number of integrated laboratories in the districts. Now, the people there in the districts should have capacity to do basic soil analysis so that they can be able to support the farmers as we wait for the other academic ones. Now, the other one is the absence of the private sector where they are needed in the rural areas on issues of soil. When it comes to soil testing, this people in Kampala, for us work with Jaba Engineering, has it gone? So Jaba is in Intinda. He has at least helped us to build capacity of at least one of our staff under some project. Now, when again, if you don't talk about those, I talk about Kawanda. So we need to interest this private sector to move to the countryside where farming is taking place. But these are business people. They need, of course, they need to be incentivized. We have to find a way, how are they going to be incentivized to move there? So that it means that you have to work with the farmers, sensitize them, let them get to know the importance of them knowing the status of their soils so that they can do precision farming, which will be more profitable to them.
Thank you so much, members, for your submissions. We are running short of time, but not bad. Allow me invite Commissioner Alex Wakuba to to respond to a few of the concerns raised and also give us closing remarks as my kindly refrain. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much. Can I do this from here, if you don't mind? There's one actually that triggered me, and I'm inclined to maybe to answering it. And that's my neighbor, Dr. Is it Dr. Iru? Dr. No. My neighbor, okay, him. That Don. And I start with that one. What very interesting discussion. You do a lot of research. But where are the policies? I think that's how I picked it. Now, maybe if I may sound a little bit arrogant, not all the research done will transform into policies. Some of the research is for your academic achievements anyway, and it may not translate directly to our development aspirations, national development aspirations. Can I answer you that way? That's one answer. But maybe some of this research does not address the key issues and the key problems, the vital problems and their causes that will transform into policy. I'll sound controversial here. Ordinarily, this evidence-based research should result into policy briefs, not necessarily policies per se. And I may maybe answer that, you know, we have also lots of policies and we have a policy clearing mechanism. That's why we have OPM, we have a cabinet with even guidelines, you know, policy formulation and policy development cycles. Now, we subject these policy proposals to what we call a RIA, regulatory impact assessment. Your research, yes, may generate the evidence, the data, but when subjected to the RIA, these policies may not be, actually your evidence may not translate into national policies. You would love to see. Are you getting me? Through the RIA with 12 steps, your evidence may be used to strengthen the existing policies or policy frameworks or strategies. They may end up at strategy level. I don't know whether I am explaining this. So they may even go for other options. A RIA, regulatory impact assessment, has options. So your evidence may strengthen other options. Just to strengthen the existing activities, improve extension, and not necessarily a policy. Now, in 2000 or even shortly before, we tried to come up with a national soils policy. Actually, it was drafted, but this one died somehow, somewhere. It was by Professor Zake was the consultant. But we also need policy advocates. That's why we have the lobbyists, advocates. We cannot really be there to craft the policies and also advocate the policy formulation ourselves. That's why we need you. That's why we need you. Maybe I will stop at that, but I also have a question. The question is, members, what informs fertilizer application? What should inform fertilizer application? It should be the soil status. What is the status of the soil? What is the fertility level, the nutrient status of the soil? For us in the ministry, I came up with a term we call soil agronomic suitability analysis. Soil agronomic suitability analysis. That one is just to demand that every modern farmer must first of all look at what is in the soil. Every commercial, meaningful modern farmer should do that. But more often than not, we are limited by the finances, the resources. So we end up just applying fertilizers, blanket applications. Somehow, somewhere, we may even end up with pollution because we are making recommendations here. Now apply 15%, 50%. What is the rationale for that? What is the guideline, the guidance? What invokes? What encourages you to apply that one? Please, we need to be guided by the soil testing. Soil testing. And for us in modern commercial farming, we need to do that. By the way, we don't know, we do not test these soils because we want to know the, you know, the bases. But we are talking about it. Test this soil to know where, like the pollutants, the heavy metals, the lead, the mercury, the arsenic. So we must, as of necessity, first analyze our soils before we go to produce. Can we come up with this one as a policy recommendation? Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for this discussion. It is interesting, it is rich. We need you much as you need us. A soils policy is overdue in Uganda, long overdue. I told you 2000. We started in 1998, 99. And by 2000, we had a draft. 2004, with NEMA, can we team up and come up with this one? You, not us. Us in agriculture, we cannot do what? Yeah? Please, no. That is. We tried a Uganda Soils Institute. I can see Mulongo Chiza Ruswata here. But those efforts come up with the Uganda Soils Institute. I am a member, he's a member. Who else is a member? Dr. Kaisi? I don't see. Members, where these efforts? Can we please try to reinvigorate the processes that can lead us into what we want to do? Soil health. We had a soil health session. Dr. Kaiz, you are heading it. Is it that one, the one that translated into this African fertilizer and soil health action plan? Where is it? Where did it go? Natural death. Can we revive it? Who are pastors here? And they pray for it to do what? To be resurrected. Ladies and gentlemen, I think with these few remarks, I want to thank you very much. Let us walk the talk. Thank you very much. God bless you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Commissioner Alex Rwakuba, for the clarifications and giving us the closing remarks. I now welcome Professor Barnabas Bashasha from IFPRI to give us closing remarks as we wait for Claudia from IFPRI also to give us closing remarks, and we conclude the workshop.
Thank you, Sam. Sam, I think is good at ambushing. I don't know whether he was the other side with the. But it has been a very nice and beautiful day. Thank you very much to everyone for being very attentive, being very alert, and being very engaging. I'm sure if this workshop was 2 days, we'd probably have had people here and had contributions, but I think time and other resources were limiting. So, but just on behalf of IFPRI, I would like to again repeat to thank you for devoting your valuable time. Many of you are very important people here, actually all of you, with big offices that you have abandoned and decided to spend the time with us here. So we are very grateful. Your ideas have been noted. I think the slides will be shared, and I think there will be follow-up activities. You can see some of the presentations had identified areas that are still being investigated. So At some point in time, we'll call you back to interact with this and with the additional information that will have come up. IFPRI is closely linked into the process, and the office is open anytime. So I don't want to say travel back safely, because I think I leave that to Dr. Ringler and the other speakers to pronounce. But thank you very much, and God bless you. Commissioner Wakuba, you talked about the pastor. I think you are one in the making. When you retire, you can start a church.
Thank you, Prof, for your closing remarks. As IFPRI, allow me invite Dr. Claudia to give us closing remarks as part of IFPRI family, and we'll have evening tea shortly after that. Thank you.
Yeah, so first, I guess, as Dr. Bashasha suggested, I would like to say travel safely. I'm glad you all came here safely, and I hope you will all travel back safely. Yeah, I think I really enjoyed the discussion on soil health. Some of the presentations were too technical, and I think that's exactly what we heard. We need capacity sharing that works for farmers. We need better systems, that where farmers can access information on soil health. And on this question, we would be happy to report the results back to the farmers, but we don't have resources to travel. But if we have phone numbers, we can do that. Dr. Kaizi has to finalize the data analysis so that we can provide each farmer with some information about their current soil health on their plots and also how it has changed. So I fully agree we should do that. In terms of data sets, all of our data sets are being put online on Harvard Dataverse. So all the data sets can be found on the internet, but maybe it's more difficult to find because it's not through the Uganda Statistical Office. We put data sets online once we have one publication published. So that's the one rule, but the data will be online. We can also, already share some statistics if people are interested. So happy to do that. And then it was interesting, we actually, once we close, we have coffee. And so I'm a little bit worried about drinking coffee now, but after hearing that there's some stuff put on the coffee, the coffee plants in Uganda where our farmers don't know if it's healthy for the plant or is it healthy for people or if it's healthy for no one. But farmers are still applying these, what did you call them, foliant fertilizers? Is that like a pesticide or is it's really fertilizer? We just don't know. Okay, fine. Okay, good. So that is really, we don't want to have another meeting where such a question comes up, right? Because people really should people should know what they put on, and they need to know why they put it on and what is it for. And they need to also know if what they put on actually improves soil health or not. So I think that's one of the big messages here. I hope that one of the other big messages has been that there is a need to invest in capacity sharing on soil health and also in education. And my suggestion to the gentleman who said we get all these students from Sierra Leone and Burkina Faso, just keep them, make sure they don't leave. If the Ugandan students go to South Africa and stay, so then you just keep the one from Sierra Leone here. We need this exchange. And, if you educate them already, so, try to keep them here in the Ugandan system. I know there can be some language issues with Burkina, but if they study here, I'm sure their English or languages, will be fine. And then I guess I still hope that, that I've been able to make a point that the gender of the soil health manager is very important in the whole story, can really affect soil health futures, and that we have to just be aware of the constraints that men farmers face. They also face constraints, and that women farmers face, and just be aware of them and try to overcome all of them, and not only overcome the easiest constraints, try to overcome all of the constraints so that we reduce the gap in access to resources and achievements. I think that should be a national goal as well in the whole soil health story. And then, as everyone said, this is definitely an ongoing story. There's still a lot of work to be done. And also, I think what's really important is that this is not just generation of knowledge and information. It has to feed into the localization of the African fertilizer and soil health development plan. So, and I hope now, I think hopefully I've convinced some people that it's important to have some goals linked to equity, obviously capacity sharing. We can hopefully use the data set to generate some more recommendations, to address the long-term changes in soil health parameters. But so this is definitely not the end of dissemination. This is like somewhere in the middle, and we have to generate additional results, and then to help to really influence the Ugandan soil health and fertilizer strategy and plan. And then, as you all said, we need resources, which is much more difficult this year than it was last year, and maybe even more difficult in future years. So I think we need, everyone on board. So IFPRI is very happy to help on that, of course, trying to help fundraise for the Ugandan fertilizer and soil health plan. And we'd like to be engaged, stay engaged in that, and really hope that if we do another survey in 10 years, that the parameters that they look better and they move in the right direction. So I think that's the goal, and I think you all can make a difference here. You can all contribute to this goal, and that's what we hope for. And thanks again, for being part of this journey. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you so much, Claudia. We are coming to the end of today's session. I have a few clarifications to make. One, we have evening tea, please don't leave it behind. Two, we have transport refund. If IFPRI does not pay cash, we shall use mobile money. So make sure that you register the right mobile phone number and perhaps the names. Let me hope it's in your names. With Adrabo. Adrabo is the lady there. So make sure you have registered before we leave. I think by close of business, either today or tomorrow, you'll have received your transport refund. Otherwise, thank you so much. It's been nice meeting most of you. I'm happy to have met some of the people that I've worked with before, the likes of Dr. Ebanyat at IITA, the likes of Professor Barnabas Bashasha at KS, Dr. Indy Katunja at SIAT. Finally, I'm Samson Tuheyo. I'm a researcher and an M&E specialist. It's been nice listening to me. And thank you, IFPRI, for giving me this chance to take this house throughout the sessions. Thank you so much. God bless you.